Rashid Rice was leading the NFL in yards after catch. A rookie who really wasn't all that involved in the offense for the first 6, 7, 8 games. I mean, I don't know when the numbers really ticked up, but I mean, guys, leading the NFL with the likes of Tyreek Hill in that Mike McDaniel offense and all of these other players that are great after the catch, Deebo Samuel and Kyle Shanahan's offense, and Rashid Rice leading the league in yak. So I look at this guy now and I say, well, God, they've added Marquise Brown and Xavier Worthy to truly be able to stretch the field and take responsibility away from Rashid and any kind of focus that teams might try to do underneath. They're just going to, it's pick your poison.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank. If you're thinking about starting a business or know someone who is, check out Emprise Bank's SBA loans. It's always good to know your options, and they can be your partner in possible.
Yeah, that's right, folks. The show is called Amateur Hour. I am Ryan Scott Hall, and joining me today, a man who's wearing a really sharp-looking bucket hat, is Dirkness.
Sup, bucket hat season, baby!
Yeah, it's kind of always bucket hat season on the West Coast, though, is it not?
Yeah, maybe.
If it's not sunny, it's raining, right? Those are your two options out there. Okay. Well, listen, folks, the last time that we spoke, we were talking largely about the defense, trying to kind of get acclimated. We're getting our sea legs back as we enter the 2024 NFL season. And today, we've got a buffet of offensive football waiting for you. My friend, his Dirkness, has once again come up with some excellent questions that are going to help set the table for what could be a very special and historic opportunity for the Kansas City Chiefs. Dirk, why don't you take us away with the offensive questions for 2024?
Hell yeah. I like the buffet for the offense for Andy. I'm sure he appreciates that wording from you. We're going to start with question 6 here. We did the first 5 questions last week. So we're starting from 6 here, going to 10 for our Chiefs preview. Question 6. A little throwback here, a little best and worst for those who might remember that. Could Kingsley the Kingslayer be the best move of Brett Veach's GM tenure as Chiefs? And could Felix and the gun of allows, I don't even have his last name here, I forgot it, actually become the worst move of Brett Veach's GM tenure? So I wanted to start off here with a bit of some spicy takes built into a question as we transition from defense to offense once and for all. So we're going to start with Felix here to wrap up the defense real quick. I can't believe how negative it's all gotten with Felix all of a sudden. We all kind of, pardoned his last year with the snaps weren't really there. He wasn't really ready. He was a developmental guy. And now the preseason has happened, which I've been able to see in limited capacity out here because they don't show games live typically. And now all of a sudden people are talking as if Felix is just done. Done. And the hope just seems to be gone for him. So that is, it's wild to see. What are your thoughts on Felix for this upcoming season?
All right. So I will agree with you while disagreeing with some good friends of ours. I feel like every single time that there has been some runway for our friends Kent and Maddie over on the lab to talk about Felix, it's just been, there's nothing good to say. And that's just, their reading of the situation, and I'm sure that they're connected in their own ways, and all whatever they're hearing and whatever they're seeing, this combination has just not been positive. And to me, I don't know, I guess I was actually kind of surprised, despite all the talk on KCSN and maybe elsewhere about how the Chiefs needed to, they really had to add to the pass rush. I was surprised at the trade for Cam Thomas personally, Because the way that I saw the position was, I know exactly what I have in Karlaftis and Dana. I just paid Dan because I want to keep him as a part of this core. And George Karlaftis is, coming off a season in which he showed a lot of growth and continued to be one of the youngest, effective pass rushers in the NFL. And then you've got a Malik Herring, who is a snaps eater, that is really a first and second down player and ultimately can rotate down and, do that inside out type of stuff that Spags loves. And ultimately you've got Felix as what looks like a situational pass rusher. If it's third and medium to long, like obvious pass rushing situations, when you're going to go NASCAR, Felix is in that package. And I'm like, he was the youngest or second youngest player in his draft class. He was probably still one of the youngest guys in this draft class, even though he had been in the league for a year. I mean, this is a guy that when he showed up at K-State didn't even weigh 200 pounds. And so getting to him to adjust to the size and the expectations at the NFL level, I don't know, man. I have just been happy to be patient with him as a player. I've also thought that when I've watched him, there's a lot of close, and I don't know exactly what that means, but kind of creating some pressure, getting close. But I've also seen him get double teamed a lot. It felt like for the entire second preseason game, which would have been the Lions, that it was the whole game. He was getting the guard helping as he's trying to get around the edge. And if he ever went inside, the guard is hitting him. And I'm just like, well, how are we supposed to see anything if he's double teamed on every single play? Because he's going to be the guy that gets the least amount of attention if he's in that NASCAR package. And don't get me wrong, he's probably going to be lined up against the left tackle. But I personally have just thought they were always going to bring him along slowly. And as soon as Amenahu comes back for the second year in a row, it's like, have you shown enough to continue to be a part of the rotation, or are your snaps going to dwindle later in the year as we ramp up Amenahu? And I don't think that either one of those things is necessarily bad, but yeah, it's still totally in the realm of possibility that, he, I guess in the Brett Veach era, he probably surpasses Clyde as the worst first round pick.
Yeah, I did some crowdsourcing on what the worst moves were. It was, a lot of Speaks, a lot of Hitchens, a lot of Clyde, a sprinkling of McColl and Sky, mostly because of who was taking after them. I don't think they're up there necessarily, but trading up for Speaks is pretty bad, and given that Hitchens contract is pretty bad, maybe Juwan Taylor. Juwan Taylor.
I mean, I'd love to talk about Juwan Taylor. I mean, look, do you guys remember how the beginning of the season unfolded for Juwan Taylor? The fact that because the Chiefs had won the Super Bowl, that gives them the right to host the very first game when, all the eyes are watching. It's the first game of the NFL season. And that night, former Bengal and noted Chiefs hater Chris Collinsworth goes on this big rant about how Juwan Taylor, who, frankly, no one's ever paid attention to before because he came over from the Jacksonville Jaguars, and suddenly he's the most important player on the field, according to Chris Collinsworth, because of how he lines up. And, oh, by the way, it's the same way that every other offensive tackle in the league lines up.
Right.
Anyway.
With all the receiver mistakes all season long, I think I kind of forgot about Juwan Taylor and all his mistakes. And it's record-setting, penalty-laden season he had last year.
I mean, what it ends up leading to for Juwan Taylor is a season where he has 22 penalties. And Dirk, I did a little research on this. It turns out that his 22 penalties in 2023 is the exact same number of times that Juwan Taylor was flagged in 2020, 2021, and 2022 combined. Had 22 penalties over the course of his 3 previous seasons and suddenly had this big spike year last year. My hope is that, as is customary for a lot of football players with, too many blows to the head, there's maybe going to be some amnesia that happens in between last year and this year because I don't
CTE upon it.
I did. I just don't want to see the same results as far as these penalties are concerned. It seems absolutely asinine that our right tackle was officiated differently than every other right or frankly left tackle in the entire NFL last year. And so to me, this guy progressing to the mean in both penalties and play is really a huge factor for the Chiefs as they pursue a three-peat. I mean, he was an elite right tackle in 2022, and he's being paid like an elite right tackle now. There's a very small margin for bad money on this roster, folks. Like, a return to form means that the books are in good shape and Andy can spend all of their time and attention helping the other guy that this question was about, who's going to be manning the left side of the line. Like, if Jawan Taylor is the player that they signed him to be, then all of the help, all of the chips, all of the double teams, every single thing that you do on any given play, you can just help Kingsley and make his job as easy as possible because you trust to a man Jawan Taylor, Trey Smith, Creed Humphrey, and Joe Thuney to just win anything that you ask them to do. And so suddenly it makes this offensive line like everything that you need if Jawan Taylor is just honestly the guy that he was in 2022. And I don't think that 2022 is an aberration the way that 2023 was for him. I mean, I see so much potential here. I will say on Kingsley, I'll hear your arguments about, how difficult it is to be a rookie left tackle, how the fact that he was a second-round draft pick, not necessarily even boding well for him to be a quality starter, given, the history of guys being drafted outside of, honestly, even like the top 15 or 20 picks. But here's the thing. Here's what I see when I look at, and this is what I've gone with, is Kingsley Suamatazisu.
Little Zissou in there? Little Zissou?
Kingsley Suamataia Zissou. In most draft classes, this guy would have gone in the teens. You're going to hear people call him raw, but what I see is a 21-year-old five-star prospect with prototypical size, rare athleticism, and family pedigree. And ultimately, whether it ends up being like one of Brett Veach's best moves or it just happened to fall in his lap and he was smart enough to not screw up the pick, I'll tell you what, folks are going to be pissed when they find out that the Chiefs have their 10-year left tackle in the second round. People are going to be pissed. They're going to be like, of course, oh my God, the Chiefs, it always goes the Chiefs' way. And I'm like, well, starting about 6 years ago, sure, yes, always goes our way.
Well, not always. I mean, we have Felix. Earlier in this question, we talked about a huge bust that we had in Felix. But yeah, so I know this is way too soon and obviously hyperbolic to ask this at this point. But hot damn, every sign right now that we've seen from the Kingslayer thus far has been a huge positive. Like his PFF grade in these preseason games, the zero competition from Juan Morris at all, which, a second rounder from 1 year and a third rounder from the year before would seem like they're, should be about even going into the following season. And yet it has never been a single doubt along the way. It's just been Kingsley from the beginning.
Never a doubt.
And so, yeah, to the point, I mean, if Veach has found his left tackle of the future late in the second round, it's hard to imagine what's more important than, the future protection of what will eventually become an aging Mahomes. And to do that in the second round, these left tackles just don't grow on trees. They don't hit free agency. We were in the Trent Williams bidding a few years ago and we lost out. But that's why we went all in, because we knew how hard that is to get, that late in the draft. They don't have free agency. They go in the top 10 of drafts. We already spent big money on Orlando Brown Jr., which didn't really work out. This was going to be a problem for the foreseeable future. And we just, Donovan Smith was a good stopgap, but that's still not addressing it for the future. So, I realize the hyperbolic nature of this, his other moves, drafting Snead or Creed or McDuffie. One of some of his best moves, maybe hiring Spags, maybe the whole Tyreek Hill trade situation. But if this guy just becomes like a stud left tackle and we got him late in the second round and he just starts from day one and is a good player this year, I think this goes right along the top of Brett Veach's moves as general manager. And yes, Patrick Mahomes happened before he was general manager, so that is not in the the equation here. If you're keeping score at home.
I mean, I don't know. I really think that a lot of Kingsley's success is going to be aided by what Jawan Taylor is as a player this year. And that doesn't necessarily mean that like the success or failure as a player for his entire career is going to hinge on Jawan Taylor. That would be asinine. But I don't know, man. I see a lot more Mitch Schwartz than like Damian McIntosh in Jawan Taylor. You know, this is a guy that was rated so high as a pass blocker and pretty low really as a run blocker. But I think just because of the penalties last year, it was almost like he was unplayable. But they even, I don't know if you remember, they at one point, Andy said after the game that they had pulled Jawan Taylor in a game, put the backup in and told him to line up like in an extreme position, try to get them to throw a flag, and they didn't.
A wild thing to do in an NFL game.
He just wanted to see, right? And so I think that there's going to be, some change there that we should not expect to see the same level of penalties. And even if just the penalties go away, it starts to solidify things on that right side of the line. And I really do believe that, like, the Chiefs like to put their tackles on an island. Like, it's really the perfect way for Andy's offense to work, that they don't have to add all of the chips and bumps and everything else that they do. Even the screen passes and stuff that they've used to really try to get inside different pass rushers' heads. The athleticism that Kingsley brings to the table gives them a lot of options. But if they can focus any kind of help that they need just only on that one side of the line to make his job easier, it just makes me think that, like, not that, oh my gosh, he needs it, he's handicapped or he's not ready or whatever, but just that they've done such a good job at putting talent together. And that offensive line is 100% Brett Veach. Every one of those moves is his. And ultimately, 3 of the 5 are his draft picks. I mean, it's just shout out to Veach, man. Like,
if they hit their potential, if Jawan can play up to his potential, and then you're looking at the inside guy, Trey Smith's going to get $20 million a year here next year. Creed Humphrey just became the highest paid center. Joe Tooney is considered the best pass blocking guard in the NFL. And then Kingsley, if he can be anywhere where we want, I mean, this has the makings of an absolutely dominant offensive line right away. And that's incredible.
Exciting stuff, man. I mean, and honestly, like, I do want to reiterate one final point. Truly, don't think of this guy as a second round pick. I mean, like, maybe if it makes the argument sound good, sure, like, oh, he was taken 60th overall. But this is a guy that in most draft classes is going to be taken in the top half of the first round. It was a historic draft class for offensive tackles specifically. Like, 8 of them went in the first round, and Kingsley was, to me, like a similar prospect to all those guys, but so many had been taken. He just happened to be the one that fell.
So you're just saying that because there were so many offensive tackles? That's the reason?
To me, yes. I mean, it was an absolutely loaded draft class at offensive tackle. And I mean, just one after another going. I do believe like it may have been the most offensive tackles to go in the first round ever. Like, it was that many. And so Kingsley falling into the late part of the second round, I mean, he was like the 10th or 11th offensive tackle drafted. And I don't even think he like slipped through the cracks. It's just it was that good a draft class that next year, if he came out as a 22-year-old senior, I mean, that's a guy that might be going top 10. They got lucky.
Joe.
With all of that being said, we're going to take a little break. And when we're back, we're going to talk about the pass catchers on this football team.
We appreciate you supporting KC Sports Network by listening to our podcast. You have helped us become the highest-ranked Chiefs podcast network in 2022 and 2023. And don't forget about our daily Substack newsletter, the best written analysis you can find on the Chiefs straight to your inbox every day. kcsn.substack.com.
Welcome back, folks. Once again, here in 2024, we are partnered with the Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Kansas City. And if you are a small business owner or somebody that represents a company that's trying to do some good in the community, you can hit it out of the park with a sports league sponsorship with the Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Kansas City. You can reach thousands of local families with your advertising while also giving kids the opportunity to get in the game. It's a win-win. Contact giving at helpkckids.org for more information.
Do you love sports? Want to share your love by coaching local youth? Our partners this year, the Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Kansas City, need your help today. Beyond after-school programming, the clubs offer leagues for baseball, softball, basketball, flag football, and more. Just visit helpkckids.org for click on volunteer for more information. I like how you separated it on the sheet for Ryan and Dirk, because last year I kept reading the same one as you. I wasn't listening and then just read the same one. So thanks for doing that. Thanks for taking the extra step, Ryan.
You're welcome. And welcome to Amateur Hour, everybody. As I mentioned last week, and I don't know if anybody has taken the time to do this yet, but I want to strongly encourage everybody to check out this listener survey from Blue Wire Pods. This is like the hosting service that we use at KCSN, so we care a lot about the health of that company, and ultimately what this survey, which you can find at bluewirepods.com/survey, they're really just trying to figure out like how we can improve the experience for our listeners. So you're going to ask you some questions about your habits. It's really just like a few simple questions. And guess what? You take that survey. Not only do you help KCSN and all of us that work here and try to put this thing together for you each week, but you'll be entered to win a gift card for $500, which you could then use that gift card to sponsor a sports league or team at the Boys and Girls Clubs of Greater Kansas City. Look at that. It could be a double whammy. All you got to do is go to bluewirepods.com/survey, fill that thing out, do KCSN and Blue Wire Pods a service because you love us and we love you too.
I just hope they weren't listening to when you said that Jawan Taylor needs to develop CTE to improve this year.
No, I was thinking about like the refs or Collinsworth or something. Well, Jawan Taylor. No one on our team. Nobody on our team.
All right, let's get to 7 here. Move along. Shout out to the 2015 Royals. Is that what speed do? Was speed the one true missing ingredient from the 2023 Chiefs offense? A couple nuggets on this one. Trent Green said in one of the preseason games, essentially paraphrasing Mahomes, the deep ball was missing from our offense. We need to get back to that. I always kind of pay attention to that because, Trent Green's just taking that straight from Patrick Mahomes' mouth. So it's kind of just like, what is the main thing you're looking for this season? And then a quip here from Kevin Clark, who was on with Bill Simmons, who said Xavier Worthy is the most important player in football this year because if he's a legitimate receiver, the league is over. That was his quote. The league is over. So obviously the team agrees here and going out and signing Marquise Brown and drafting Xavier Worthy, a couple 4-2 guys. That was clearly their top priority of this offseason, was to get the speed back in the offense and to get that deep ball going again. So my question was that the only thing that was missing? Because we saw this offense drop off quite a bit. There's just adding speed back into this offense, vault it to where they once were before last year's somewhat disastrous offensive season.
I mean, I can see where, if you want to make that argument, I can see where you're coming from. Mahomes, from Mahomes' mouth, the deep ball's missing, right? We want to get back to that. And I mean, he's got a point. How about this for you, Dirk? Last year, Justin Watson and MVS combined for 65 go routes. 65 goes on the season. How many catches do you think they had?
12.
0. They caught none of them. Not a single go route on the year. And so like that is bad, to put it lightly. Look, I guess
go to the sideline.
It's interesting to me because like I know that there was a lot of excitement about the receivers last year because it appeared that the Chiefs had like a depth of talent in the exciting young, albeit unproven players. And like they kept 7 guys. I mean, that was the first time Andy had kept 7 in Kansas City. If I think that's right, could be wrong. But on top of that, turns out only one of them was any good. And then the offseason happened. And now this inevitable and like totally unpredictable suspension looms for the one good receiver from last year, Rashid Rice. So I don't really know like how that might affect things, but we've already got people talking about how much more confident, comfortable, explosive, decisive this guy looks in practice and in these preseason games. And then you add all that speed on top of it. Like the way that I look at this offense, the way that it's going to actually, I guess, kind of operate on a week-to-week basis, the speed being back in town really gives them the opportunity to kind of be a little, they're constantly stretching the defense, both vertically and horizontally. Suddenly, teams are going to be like, we have to cover every single blade of grass and like show respect to the entire field. And they didn't have to do that so much last year. I think that this is going to be the best offense in the NFL. And it's because defenses are going to have to respect deep, and then they're just going to get destroyed underneath with Rashid Rice and Travis Kelce. And no matter what they do with their safeties, they're going to be moving back and forth like a yo-yo, just trying to figure it out. And meanwhile, Andy Reid and Mahomes are running the show. And oh, by the way, Isaiah Pacheco exists. Like, dude, they're going to be the best offense in the league. They are going to be the number 1 offense in the NFL this year. That is what I believe. I believe it wholeheartedly.
So, and even just the threat of it. Because, I mean, last year, I think what eventually devolved the offense was, at the start of the year, they were still like, well, they're still the Chiefs and it's Mahomes and they can still do things. And then eventually, as the year went on, they're like, defense kind of figured out, like, they don't have that threat anymore. They are not going to throw downfield. They can't do it. And then started coming forward on us. And that really closed down, the Travis Kelce and everything. And they had to really mix things up. But other pitfalls that could be in there, like the rise of the too high, just defenses in general kind of won 2023 over offenses. I would say like a lot of quarterbacks' numbers went down from a couple previous seasons, so that was kind of interesting. Maybe like a second year without Tyreek Hill. I mean, obviously that's a big loss, but like coordinators kind of adjusting over time to doing that, and then Travis Kelce slowing down is the other obvious one that's kind of sitting there, both last year and on into this year. But the biggest reason for optimism for me, Andy Reid with the full offseason following a disappointing offensive season. Like, I don't think he had much reason to change things going from 2022 to 2023. The offense was still clicking. They were the best offense in the league. They won the Super Bowl. It was most of the same pieces. We're adding Rashid Rice in here. Like, things should just continue to go. And then we hit the trouble. And we were kind of trying to like mix things up and figure things out, but we just didn't really have the weapons to do it. And so it's kind of just like, then we had to change our philosophy, going to a running game and kicking field goals and defensive team and whatnot. But we did get away from like the explosive offense that obviously we're used to seeing. But I don't think they want that to last. There's no way Andy Reid is sitting at home all offseason like, ooh, that strategy really worked out for us and we won a Super Bowl doing that. We're going to keep doing it the same way. No. Andy Reid wants to score fucking 30 points a game. Patrick Mahomes wants to score 30 fucking points a game. These guys are committed to being one of the top offenses. And, I think they're going to change things up. And obviously these pieces coming in are going to help them do that. But yeah, I'm with you. I mean, number 1 offense definitely seems reasonable. But a huge improvement over last year. You would have to believe. So I don't know if speed is like the only missing ingredient from last year, but I do think it was the top missing ingredient. And also just like dumb mistakes, cutting out the, MVS being dumb, Kadarius Toney being dumb. McCole Hardman might still be dumb, but, maybe less of him being dumb this year, but less of a need for it. So, cutting out those mistakes, I think was the other big thing. And just inopportune times, it just kind of like festered on us. It snowballed throughout the season where it got in their head like, damn, I made a big mistake. And now it's in your head like, don't make the same mistake again. until somehow they were magically able to break that before the playoffs. But it felt like through the regular season, it just kind of kept compiling until the point where none of these receivers could play football anymore. They're all thinking about the mistakes they're making, the drops they're having, and all this stuff. And that really ballooned into bigger problems for the offense.
And honestly, though, I mean, one mistake that I think the Chiefs won't make this year is, it's not even probably fair to call it a mistake, but like they know who their, I'm going to say, best receiver is going into the season. Last year, it was like, we have these 7 guys and we like all of them and we'll see what Sky Moore can do. I mean, honestly, we walked into last season thinking that Sky Moore was going to be the number 1 receiver on the team. Like, and when I say we, I mean like most people.
Well, me and you, especially, that was our answer to we erased those tapes, didn't we? We burned those?
Not mine. I'll wear it. Like, I was
I don't know how he's not good. I do not know how Sky Moore was not good. It doesn't make sense.
It is.
I see him get off the line like that, like he should be able to win all these different man routes, and yet it just didn't happen. But you're kind of leading into the next question here. You good?
Yeah.
Question 8 for the Chiefs 2024 season. Who emerges as the Chiefs' top pass catcher? I saw a few people kind of offhandedly remark that Rashid Rice is expected to be the team's number 1 receiver. Mahomes has apparently been raving about him. He did escape the suspension, it would seem, for the entire 2024 season, probably coming at the start of 2025. And, then I was looking at like fantasy rankings. I did a draft last week. I like to use Evan Silva, and he had Xavier Worthy at 51st in his rankings. He had Rashid Rice at 31st in his rankings. So he had Rashid Rice first, Xavier Worthy only at 51st, the wide receiver 31, ahead of names like Terry McLaurin, Deontay Johnson, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Ridley, Pickens, Hopkins, Keenan, Goodwin. I mean, these are all big-time players in the NFL, and he has a rookie Xavier Worthy ahead of them. The next receiver on that list of the names I just read was Marquise Brown. And I kept thinking throughout the offseason, there's going to be this hype about other guys. I was thinking Marquise Brown was going to be the breakout star, and he was going to have like a 1,300-yard season. Like, I thought Marquise Brown was in for a big season. And the only thing that's really changed with that is his injury, and we just haven't seen him. So, that he might miss like a game or two at the start of the season or whatever. So that clearly affects his fantasy value here. But I'm just curious where you see all these pieces. Throw in an aging Kelsey, who's not, definitively the number 1 option for Mahomes anymore. And you kind of have this grab bag of 4 guys who could all end up being the Chiefs' top receiver,
I think there's actually a 5th guy in this mix too. But I'm going to save that. I'm going to save it because we've got another question that it might be a little bit better suited for, but there is a sneaky additional option in this receiving, hierarchy, I guess.
Is that a tight end they just traded for?
They traded for a tight end? Who's it? Really? Oh, I guess it was, at the deadline, what's the guy's name from Dallas or something? Oh, I thought you were breaking some news on me here. Who did they just trade for? No, I mean, look, when I look at this position, if we're trying to figure out, who emerges as the number 1, like I'm going to lean into Rashid Rice because once they discovered that he was, one of their best offensive players last year, it's like the offense found itself. And that may just be coincidental that they also decided that, hey, we are a defensive team and we're going to, kick field goals when it's 4th and 8 and do stuff like that. And, they really solidified after they bottomed out against the Raiders. And a lot of it seemed like it was also at the same time that it was like throw the ball to Rashid Rice a lot. And I think that Rashid Rice is going to have a much easier job this year. And he's also just better. Like he had, apart from the bad headlines of the offseason, it sounds like on the field, he's actually had a very, very good offseason. A lot of very positive things being said about the way that he is playing football right now, and the growth and maturity that they're seeing from him. So I mean, I think that Rashid is going to be, one of the best fantasy performers, probably one of the best values in fantasy that you can get right now, because there's still technically question marks about the suspension. But
I always kind of thought, I don't know if this is fair or not, but I was always a bit skeptical, or not always, but I'm a bit skeptical of like Rashid Rice's ceiling. Like I almost felt like we kind of had to like force the ball to him last year, like out of necessity. And like I realized he was a rookie, so maybe he doesn't know the whole tree here, but it felt like, a lot of stuff like at the line of scrimmage or like very simple routes and not much like intermediate stuff. And that's why I kind of thought like Marquise Brown would come in and just start eating in the intermediate part of the field, and maybe start putting up more chunks of yardage. And Rashid Rice would just kind of continue on like his same path of like a 900 to 1,000 yard receiver. It's kind of how I saw things shaking out. Is that fair to Rashid Rice? That they were kind of forcing things to him last year, and it wasn't like necessarily winning as like a true receiver?
Oh, well, I mean, I think he only caught one pass and was only thrown one pass beyond 20 yards the whole year. I mean, and it was like, they were talking about Moses' average depth of target was like by far the worst that it had ever been, and like one of the lowest in the league. He was basically throwing the ball 5 yards or less on most plays. The reason that Rashid was so good is because of what he did after the catch. He was going into the final week of the season that he didn't play, obviously. Going into that final week of the season, Rashid Rice was leading the NFL in yards after catch. A rookie who really wasn't all that involved in the offense for the first like 6, 7, 8 games. I mean, I don't know when the numbers really ticked up, but I mean, guys, leading the NFL with the likes of Tyreek Hill in that Mike McDaniel offense and all of these other players that are great after the catch, Deebo Samuel and Kyle Shanahan's offense, and Rashid Rice leading the league in yak. So I look at this guy now and I say, well, God, they've added Marquise Brown and Xavier Worthy to truly be able to stretch the field and take responsibility away from Rashid and any kind of focus that teams might try to do underneath. Like, they're just going to, it's pick your poison, right? And the fact that both he and Kelsey get to work in that underneath and maybe, intermediate area, I think that there is a piece of Rashid Rice's game that hasn't necessarily been like tapped into yet.
I hope. That's the hope. That's what I'm cautiously optimistic about, I guess I would say.
There are potentially like other levels that this guy can get to if they're able to like throw him the ball anywhere instead of just short stuff. But the thing that I heard on the broadcast the other night was that it's basically now become that Rashid is not just like Mahomes friendly. It's that he is gaining some of this understanding with Patrick that like where Pat throws the ball is leading you to open space. Like don't try to fight against the positioning of the ball with your own momentum. Like you trust where Pat places it, and you're going to be running into the right spot on the field. And so as that relationship between the two of them grows, provided he doesn't have to deal with a suspension this year, I mean, I just think to the moon for Rashid Rice. It is interesting that injury to Hollywood, it seems like it just reminded people that like, this is what it's been in his career. Like the expectations get up there and then something maybe happens. I want to say that he's maybe only played one full season. And it's just like, just hasn't worked out. The guy was a first round pick and has been, was traded to another team so that he could play with like his best friend and his college quarterback. And then those two guys couldn't be on the field at the same time. I think he and Kyler only played like 5 games together while Marquise Brown was in Arizona. And so now you have an opportunity, but maybe it was just this reminder that like, hey, this is a guy that has been disappointing. The reason that the Chiefs were able to sign him for what they did when they did is because he's been so up and down.
Yeah, I'm kind of shocked. I just pulled up his stat line here from his career. I'm kind of shocked how low it is because like he has 1,008 yard season to his resume, and everything else 709, 769, 574. And it's he's missing games in here, but he's playing most of the season. He played 14 games last year. I mean, obviously Kyler was out for a good number of those, so not a great situation. 709 in 2022 in 12 games. I don't know. I honestly, I hadn't looked at it like really all offseason or since we signed him, I guess. And I thought I remember that being higher just because probably he's like a bigger name. So that is kind of surprising because Rashid Rice is probably, what did he put up, like 800 or 900 last year? Or maybe that was the pace of his, back half of the season or whatever. But he almost had a better season last year than Marquise has at any point. So you might have won this argument. What about Xavier Worthy? Early vibe check on him. Kind of looking a little Deshaun Jackson-y. A little Deshaun Jackson, a little tiny Elvis out there. He's a little guy. But man, that one touchdown against Detroit, he's so far away from the dude. I figured it was a bust in zone coverage. No, it was actually man coverage, and he just roasted the guy to where he wasn't even on the screen, really. What are your expectations for him this year? Just a handful of big plays and 600-700 yard range, something like that. Anything crazy?
I'm open to so many possibilities with this player. Like he brings a trait to the table that is extremely rare. I mean, literally the fastest time speed in combine history. The thing that I actually really love about him as a Chiefs fan is that it seems like anybody that, doesn't actively root for the Chiefs, there are a few people out there that see the possibilities with Xavier Worthy, but for the most part, everyone is like, I'm going to compare him to John Ross, or I'm going to compare him to, who we're talking about?
Just the fastest guy in NFL combines. Yeah, the track record is not very good for the fastest receivers to run at the combine.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think one of the other guys up there was Marquise Goodwin, right? And we saw him at that Senior Bowl, the kid from Texas, and all of those fast guys, they were track first and receiver second. And
that's what always scares me. Yeah, it's like they trained to run the 40-yard dash instead of being a fast football player on the field.
And that is what separates Worthy from those players. If you look at just Xavier Worthy's true freshman season, it is basically better numbers than any of those other big-time combine 40-yard dash running receivers that people want to compare him to. Xavier Worthy had 30 college touchdowns. The guy was going for 1,000 yards a year, basically 3 straight years. He is 21 years old, and yes, he's small. And we did see a clip, I can't remember who it was, but he got jammed at the line and thrown basically by that jam. But he's going to have free release after free release after free release because Andy Reid is in charge of the offense. And this guy actually knows how to run a route. He actually knows how to track a football in the air. And frankly, I think that he is going to be an incredible weapon when you start to get into the red zone. Some of that short stuff, some of the best routes that he ran in college were to get open at inside the 5-yard line. I mean, we're talking about seeing some of the top corners in the last couple draft classes get embarrassed by Xavier Worthy at the line of scrimmage. This is a player that there's nothing he can't do on a football field. And one of the things that's really underrated is that toughness, man. I mean, I think people are going to start to see Xavier Worthy and all those nightmares that Bills fans are probably having. I fully expect that they're going to come true. I think it's them trading the pick that becomes Xavier Worthy, and he's going to go out and have a crazy year, and everyone is just going to be like, look what you did, you little jerk.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see the amount of respect he gets. He's going to go out in the field. Do teams, shade their safety to him? Do they keep a deep safety over him at all times? Because if they don't, I think the Chiefs will go to it right away and try to establish that threat. So it'll be interesting to see how defenses react to him being on the field and just how many snaps he's getting, how much of a rotation he is. A couple final thoughts here on this. I'm expecting a somewhat reduced role for Travis Kelce this year, I guess I would say. One of the podcasts I was listening to, a few days ago, I think it was Robert Mays, I want to say, they said Travis Kelce was taking first downs off. basically just saying like he was playing way fewer snaps than he was before. That's a trend I would expect to continue. And the idea with Travis Kelce is, getting into my theme here, the Chiefs are a January team. And Travis Kelce, with where he is now at his age, it's nothing about what he does in the regular season. It's about having Travis Kelce be 100% in the playoffs. And we saw that play out in that final game when he didn't play the Chargers. He forwent the 1,000-yard season that he was, streak that he'd been on in order to get healthy for the playoffs. And we saw a different Travis Kelce in the playoffs. So that this whole season, I don't even care what Travis Kelce does throughout the season. If he has 500 yards, that's fine with me. I just want that dude to be 100% for the playoffs. Last thought.
They are going 4 deep at tight end too. I mean, after acquiring that guy from Dallas, you've got him and Noah Gray, and then TE12, who I absolutely believe is like the next guy. He
looks so good in a uniform. Like when I saw him, I was like, man, who's that? He looks like a good NFL player. I don't know if that means much, but he looks good in his uniform.
He's absolutely the heir apparent, like without a doubt in my mind. I mean, dude, look, just his athleticism at that size, plus the quarterback background. I am all the way in.
Quarterback?
All the way in. Okay? But
did he get kicked off his high school and college teams?
Oh, no, I don't.
Does he have a brother in the NFL?
But I'm telling you, because the Chiefs still have like 3 useful veterans ahead of him, Wiley's going to be in a fight for snaps on offense the entire season. And I can't wait to see how the position is handled, honestly, because like we like Noah Gray, and everyone is very excited about Jared Wiley, and they want to, showcase Travis Kelce in the ways that they can. But if they're really playing for January, it seems like the responsible thing to do to not play him on first downs or do all of the kind of quiet quitting that I thought he was doing last year throughout the regular season, where I'm like, Travis is, he got his double team and then he just stopped his route and said, cool, 2 defenders. Sounds good. I've done my job. Like, I don't know. I mean, I'm in on the give Kelce a slightly smaller workload and maybe lean on that receiver room a little bit more, because we didn't even talk about Juju too. I mean, them bringing him in and still having Justin Watson, like they actually do go deep at receiver this year, I think, in a way that like we hoped that they were deep last year, but these guys seem actually
proceed cautiously, because I remember there's way too much of that last year. Your wild stat of the day is that Juju Smith-Schuster is somehow only 27 years old. He seems like he's older than Travis Kelce, but he is only 27. He should be just entering his prime now. It's really insane. That number blew me away. Let's hop to question 9 here. Is there currently too much dip on Isaiah Pacheco's chip? Pacheco. Big loss. Big loss we haven't touched on yet. Jerk McChicken from last year. So now who slides into that third down role? We've got Clyde, who's been out all of preseason, but he is practicing now. We've got Buns of Steel coming on hard as our great white hope. Shout out to Rob Ladd for that nickname. But man, he looks fun. Man, he looks fun. Usually I don't hop on like preseason guys too much usually, because it's usually just like unwarranted hype, and it's just like, oh, I go up against 4-string or something. I was all in on some Carson Steele highlights. He was blowing me away. So like running back 2 is just kind of murky for me. We're a lot of Chiefs Twitter talking about maybe signing someone. But for right now, it almost seems kind of like Isaiah Pacheco is in a 3-down role as a running back, a true bell cow. How do you see this running back room playing out?
I like Buns of Steel. I was really enjoying Carson Steele Your Girl. Look, I would wager that over the past 2 seasons, even though McKinnon missed time last year, like he was purely in that third down role. I would not be surprised if McKinnon has more, whatever it is, yards from scrimmage or touchdowns or receptions or whatever, than like both Clyde and Pacheco and maybe all running backs on the team combined. Like it's all McKinnon as far as third down work is concerned, right? He's dominated those snaps. And that's just the production. We got to also think about everything he's done as a personal protector. I mean, absolutely everyone just on their knees for this guy, what he does as far as a pass blocker is concerned.
Just the trust in him to pick those blitzes up, and then also just like work with Mahomes on, the backyard type plays when he's rolling out. Like think of the one in Denver. So they had like definite chemistry between them, and that one like 2 years ago he had like 12 touchdowns or something. Like Jerry Pacheco was a very, very important piece of this offense,
and that's where I said
really been replaced.
And I said that's where there could be like a sneaky guy in here. He's not going to lead the team in receptions or anything, but dude, if Pacheco gets all the third down work and they just entrust him to catch the ball, I mean, there's 50 grabs waiting there for him. The interesting thing with Pacheco, I don't know. I mean, I don't think that McKinnon, like getting all of that third down volume is going to be like a fair representation of potential productivity, because it was literally McKinnon's job to be the third down running back. But like, I don't know, man. I mean, Pacheco is a hammer. And I'm not confident that more reps is good for him or good for the offense. And so, like, to me, I almost wonder if part of the, choice with this roster is that they want to try to recreate McKinnon, like, in the aggregate, kind of moneyball the third down running back role. And I don't mean trying to, use a Carson Steele or whatnot, but like maybe some of these looks go to one of the 4 tight ends on the roster. Maybe they start trying to think about what the safety valve actually has to be, what positions they're in. And, maybe in order to help as far as like the chips and stuff are concerned, I mean, that blocking aspect of the tight ends, like those guys could just become more important. And maybe Carson Steele does get some of those third downs because they can deploy him like a fullback or an H-back sort of thing. Like, I don't know if it has to be Pacheco, but I do think that if they have him become a 3-down back, it just feels like the more he's on the field, the higher the likelihood that he ends up getting nicked up and then is less effective. If you think about running back and how violent that position is, and especially if your name is Isaiah Pacheco, I mean, it's like his calling card, the style of play that he has.
It's what defines him.
Yes. And so if they're considering as a team, like, well, we really need to watch how we utilize Travis Kelce because of his age and because of how important he is, this running back room is basically Pacheco and Steele. And you're talking about a 7th rounder and an undrafted guy. But like, if Pacheco goes down, it starts to be very scary.
There you go.
Because they just don't, like, I mean, you at that point have Clyde who, knows the playbook, and that's nice, but it's about it, right? Like, I don't know, man. I'm worried that more snaps for Pacheco just it may not be the right move. I mean, it might be the right move because of him being the most talented, but like, I don't know if it's the right move for his health and for the football team. I don't know.
And it's another problem with the Chiefs are a January team. Running backs, just how often they get hurt, and how important he could be just being a better running back than anybody else on the roster. You need him around in that January run. And you need him healthy. You need running the way that he does, because he provides great value doing that. I don't think you're wrong. I almost wonder if they kind of look at some of these cuts that are coming in, because I feel like there is a hole on the roster. They end up cutting Deneric Prince at cut down, and so they only have the 3 right now, and lots of teams will carry 4 in that position, especially with a pseudo fullback coming from Carson Steele maybe. It'll be interesting to keep an eye on. Samaje Perine is kind of the one name that, I was eyeing more than anyone else. I always thought he was a good player, ran very, very hard, good blocker, good receiver. So I feel like he could almost slide into that third down role, become like the new jerk chicken. So I kind of wonder if there is a move coming with that running back 2, Or maybe Carson Steele was so good that he kind of eased those concerns. Because that was like my first thing when I looked at the preseason depth chart. I'm just eyeing it. I'm just like, man, there's a glaring hole here at RB2, which, not the best of signs for our former first-round pick, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, that he can't even be a sufficient RB2. But that is kind of where we're at this point. So it'll be interesting to see, how that happens, if they add there, or how much Carson Steele can actually provide in real games for them. All right, let's get to the final question here. First, a couple of questions left on the cutting room floor. Did not make the cut. Can we all pretend that Chris Jones holdout just never happened? Please. Looking back, I got to look back at my notes from last year heading into the season. There was everything in question kind of touched on the Chris Jones holdout. And then I remembered the whole thing of him sitting up in the box. And I'm like, oh my God, man, I can't remember how much we loved Chris Jones after that 2022 run, and then how awful that start of that 2023 was. Just a weird thing to see.
The smelly cats.
Cutting room floor. Can MAGA Mahomes and Libtard Kelsey coexist through an election year? That question did not make the cut. BJ put the axe on that one. He wouldn't allow that one.
Is that more his wife? Because we've had conversations in my house, like, because of his wife and mother, does this mean no?
Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't go there.
Don't want to talk
BJ Sposs, he said zero talk about it. Zero talk.
Okay. All right.
Can the Chiefs specialists make it through the year without going to literal or figurative prison? That one, we'll have to see about that. No, don't even further.
I'm sorry. That one is good. That one is good.
Man, Areza looks fantastic. The preseason game that I watched the most of against the Lions, a couple 60-yard boomers, and then 4 that all landed inside the 20. That guy is punt god for a reason. Another thing that just came up, Chiefs, with him falling into our lap, I think he's going to be a fantastic punter. That dude can punt a ball. All right, the actual last question here. Could Tom Brady's never-ending success actually become a good thing for Chiefs fans? And this is, Patrick Mahomes based. We haven't really talked about Patrick Mahomes yet at all. It's kind of hard to talk about someone who's so great. What question can you possibly ask? But there isn't much more for Mahomes to accomplish, really. Friendly reminder, he's already third in career playoff wins, one behind Montana for second all time. Just imagine a world where Tom Brady's overwhelming success doesn't exist to the point that it does, universally considered the best of all time. If he were down a few notches, Mahomes would firmly already be in that conversation right now. But in a strange twist of fate, it's actually better for us that Brady's success does exist because it gives Mahomes something to chase throughout his career, something for him to work towards, especially after coming on at the tail end of Brady's career and losing to him twice in the playoffs. He got to see it up close, and I think that lights a fire under Mahomes' ass to try and chase him and try to catch him throughout his career. So it's a weird twist that, as terrible as that was, the fucking 58 years of Tom Brady's dominance could actually be a driving force for the Chiefs for the next 10 to 15 years here for the rest of Mahomes' career.
I've been trying to think about how to jump in on this question. You sent it to me a couple nights ago, and really it's been plaguing me a little bit, and plaguing me. Shout out to my buddy Steve. I talked to him a little bit, tried to just kind of work through some thoughts on this question, and I thought he brought up a really interesting point. He was saying that, honestly, maybe the biggest thing about Brady's career that Mahomes can really take is just that he saw it happen, and so he knows what's possible. Because Brady playing until he's 45, Brady and the Patriots offense going through all these different iterations, literally having 2 separate dynasties, taking less money than seemingly he was worth, all these different storylines that happen, and ultimately just the obsessive competitiveness, the leadership, all these different things. It gave a blueprint just as much as it gave something for him to chase. It really just informed this is what it means to be the greatest quarterback in the NFL. And so I I think that, just like we were talking about the three-peat last week, and like in what ways that, is maybe in their minds, and how is it even represented in the facility? Like, I do think that Tom is ever present in some ways in Patrick's life. I wouldn't be surprised if he texts him regularly. It almost even seems like Brady kind of went out of his way to like anoint Mahomes as the next guy and pass the torch to him in a, at least in a figurative way.
Well, no, I think it literally happened. I think that moment after the 2018 AFC Championship game, he's talked about this a few times when Brady comes into the Chiefs locker room and just like, sees a dejected Mahomes. And I feel like I've heard Nate Taylor say like that's the lowest he's ever seen Mahomes. And for him to like come in, in the middle of his team celebration and just be like, dude, you have an unlimited potential. I think that moment meant an incredible amount to Patrick Mahomes. And, it's that will always stick with him.
I mean, I do think that all of this stuff about Brady, it is a positive. Like that is, I think, in some ways what has become weird for us as we look at this scenario. Like, how could Mahomes losing to Brady twice be a good thing when we want his legacy to be greater than Brady's? Brady's always going to have this thing looming over Mahomes. Well, I mean, when did he beat me? In the regular season? Cool. Like, enjoy that. And so I think that all of us were probably just sour on Tom Brady, didn't want to think about him or talk about him because how is Mahomes ever really going to prove it? And so I think that is now shifted into this positive thing in my mind because it is, these athletes, especially at like the highest levels of their sport, constantly talk about like the ones that got away, right? Like you remember the losses more than you remember the wins. And that happened to Patrick twice against the same dude, and so I do think that that's going to motivate him, but at least in terms of like what he does every single day. I mean, those guys being so obsessed with, got to get 1% better today. The way that they prepare, I don't know how much he's thinking about Tom and 7 Super Bowl rings and stuff. But that's, maybe Bobby's job, right? Like he's probably got, some big picture of Tom Brady, like hanging in the workout facility every time Pat's coming in there or something. But more to taunt him than like idolize, I guess. But I mean, I do think there's something there. There's something to it. It is an interesting question. Like, what made you think of it? I
think I want to say I heard Chris Broussard say it on an episode of First Things First, just kind of offhand say it. I was like, and I, just sometime in like May or June or something. And I just kind of made a mental note at that point. Like, no, it wasn't like a segment or anything. He just kind of mentioned it. Like, oh, it might have been a great thing for Brady to win all these rings because now it drives me home. And I was like, that is kind of interesting because you would think if he had like beat Mahomes or if he had beat Brady in one of those, and so he's like already there, and then it's just kind of, you might have a full up in motivation. It's just kind of natural. Like, well, I've already achieved all there is. And, there's not much else to prove. Like, I'm the greatest now. And so maybe falls off a little bit more in his career instead of, seeing these things. Like you're talking about like Brady playing until 45. I didn't even think about that part, but like opening up that possibility, like, holy shit, maybe I could play till 45, which is, oh man, like amazing.
Please play until you're 45.
Got me excited. I'm glad the camera's only, chest up here because I am quite excited about the possibilities of that. So yeah, it was just a weird thing that popped in my head, and it's been kind of sticking with me all offseason.
I don't know. I mean, when I think about like this season specifically, that offense, they really look like a absolute supercharged version of 2022. 2022, the number one offense in the league, and it was mostly based on efficiency. And now they have like the explosiveness on top of that efficiency is there. It certainly exists. It's part of the equation. And so I have been thinking more, not necessarily about like that big picture Mahomes legacy, I've really been thinking a lot about like the 50 touchdown, 5,000 yard season that ended with him losing to Brady. Like, how do we top that? You know, because like they keep looking at Mahomes' numbers and, you know, trying to get the touchdowns up there is crazy. Trying to get the yards back up there is crazy. Like, you know, and I'm just looking at this particular offense this year. Man, I think if you really want to like put your stamp on things, getting the three-peat and going out and having just this absolutely just running roughshod over the league offensively, it becomes, sure, you want to get 7 rings and stuff, but people are just going to be able to look at it and be like, what more could he do? Like, what more can this guy accomplish?
Yeah, and that would be the one thing that like he could have over Brady. Like maybe he can't get to 7 Super Bowl rings because that's a fuck ton. But if he could win 3 in a row, that's something that Brady never did. And so that's something that, you know, hold your head there.
I mean, he's going to go down as the most talented, right? It's going to be Brady was the best and Mahomes is the most talented or something.
Yeah, but if he wins enough, I think enough people like have watched both and think that, you know, just watching he's better. Like just watching both of them play quarterback, he's better. And so if he can just kind of get close to his, you know, production or his accomplishments, then I think people would, you know, side with Mahomes, like once it's all said and done kind of thing. Like Jordan passing Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, even though, or like Bill Russell or something, just because like, well, we watched him and he was better. He was better.
Yeah. I love it. Anything beyond the 10 questions that you want to hit before the Chiefs play football, man?
That's it. I'm fucking ready. Undefeated. Let's go. 1-0.
I can't believe we're here. The Chiefs chasing history, an opportunity to win a 3rd straight Super Bowl, and what would be their 4th championship in 6 seasons, all starting with a prediction from my guy that the Chiefs would win the Super Bowl in 2019, long before they even pulled that off. It's a miraculous thing that we're still here. It's a miraculous thing that the Chiefs have become the face of the NFL. Patrick Mahomes becoming like the standard bearer of excellence at the quarterback position.
They've become boring to predict the win of Super Bowl. Nobody wants to pick the win Super Bowl because it's a boring pick. And I'd be right there with them if I was not a Chiefs fan.
Yeah. No, I mean, these are the glory days, folks. I hope that each and every one of you is looking forward to the season as much as we are. We'll try to be here with you as often as possible, as certainly at least once a week. I'm Ryan Scott Hall. He says Dirkness. This is Amateur Hour. And who's Bo Nix? It's now accepting submissions for Bo Nix is fill in the blank. Even though the Justin Herbert, Phillip Rivers was supposed to just be this thing. Like everyone thought Herbert was so great. And I'm like, did you think Phillip Rivers was great? And Dirk's answer was, yes, I did. Well, I got to get a new one. I don't know how to sign off anymore. It's 2024. Go Chiefs. That's what
Gardner Minshew is Jake Plummer.
That's a fun one. Gardner Minshew is Jake Plummer. Jake the Snake. He sells mushrooms in California or Colorado. And it's like, no, like literally, like he's like he's a big mushroom distributor in Colorado.
I bought from him.